Yes, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a very short amendment. Actually, it relates to amendment of Section 16 of Public Service, that is Values and Principles Act. And it's very much in order. The Principal Act, in terms of what is supposed to be reported on, didn't provide some crucial information. And the amendment which is proposed, which I support, actually brings in the aspect of reporting annually to His Excellency and also to Parliament. And the specific things which were not in the Principal Act and which are being proposed to be included in terms of reporting, the important ones are actually the composition of the public service. All the service commissions to provide reporting on number of people who are employed, their gender, and also their ethnicity, and so on and so forth. Mr. Speaker, as a country, most of the times we complain that certain ethnic groups are either dominating in certain commissions or certain sectors, and certain ethnic groups are being left out. And therefore, when this information is provided by the various commissions, both the national commissions and also the Public Service, County Public Service Commission and the constitutional commissions, then His Excellency and also ourselves as members of Parliament who do oversight will be discussing these issues from point of information, so that when we say certain ethnic groups or certain regions are underrepresented or overrepresented, then we shall be arguing from point of facts, and therefore the various recommendations which will be put across to those commissions to correct those anomalies will be guided by facts. This being a very short amendment, I wish to support, and it actually helps us to achieve the values and principles of public service as provided for by Article 232 of our Constitution. Thank you very much, and I support the amendment.
Well, the Honorable Murigi, member for Igembe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the amendment. Mr. Speaker, in this country, the young people are more disadvantaged, Mr. Speaker, as far as employment is concerned. And it's the high time, Mr. Speaker, the Public Service Commission to be providing annually the report of the people or the persons who are employed each year, Mr. Speaker, so that we can get the clear picture of the employment curve or the employment which is used to take place in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for example, currently as the people are suffering due to this pandemic of COVID, Mr. Speaker, there are proposals by the government, Mr. Speaker, to give out some employment. But if you go outside there, Mr. Speaker, very few people who are employed according to the maybe ethics, Mr. Speaker, or from the place where they come from. Because if you are not maybe inclined to a certain person or to a certain area, Mr. Speaker, you are not considered as far as employment, Mr. Speaker, is concerned. Then, Mr. Speaker, the inclusivity during employment, Mr. Speaker, is of much importance also to be the employment to be more inclusive, Mr. Speaker, regardless of the community you are coming from, Mr. Speaker. You are supposed to be given the opportunity to get a job. Because, Mr. Speaker, in many cases, some of the people are discriminated maybe because of the sounding of their names, Mr. Speaker, whereby you hear a certain community is the one which is benefiting from some specific employment, Mr. Speaker, while leaving out other communities, Mr. Speaker. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the age factor. Mr. Speaker, the young people of this country are being discriminated a lot, Mr. Speaker, because of the age, because of the experience they have, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, myself, I was elected by the people of Wigembe South constituency without doing other jobs, Mr. Speaker, in other offices, and I am delivering to the people of Wigembe South constituency. So, Mr. Speaker, matters experience, Mr. Speaker, should be put aside so that at least the young people can benefit from the employment in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the young people are not engaged in activities, Mr. Speaker, many crimes erupt, Mr. Speaker. And it is not right, Mr. Speaker, to see the young people of this country, Mr. Speaker, being killed maybe because they have engaged in illegal drinks, Mr. Speaker, whereas they have the capacity, they have the ability, Mr. Speaker, to do something which is beneficial to this country. With that, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you.
The Honorable Wanyonyi, member for Westlands. Yes, Leader of Majority, I see you. After the member for Westlands, I'll give you an opportunity. The member for Westlands?
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the civil service is a very, very important agency for employing Kenyans. And we, like Mr. Speaker, the people who are left out every time this criteria is followed, Mr. Speaker. People living with disability or persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, there is in the Persons with Disabilities Act, it is provided that 5% of the civil service should be given to the people with disability. The people with disability who are qualified, the people with disability who have everything that is meets the criteria, Mr. Speaker, for employment, but you find they are left out. They are not, in fact, even the kind of Mr. Speaker, the environment at the place of work sometimes is the one that makes even the employer to think that employing a person with disability is an expensive affair. So I believe we should critically look into this so that all Kenyans are given equal opportunity to access to job opportunities, Mr. Speaker, because this is an area that makes people, Mr. Speaker, to subject them to abject poverty and then suffering because of denial to access, Mr. Speaker, the employment. Mr. Speaker, the values, I think the civil service is important for improving the quality of life for people. So we should look at all aspects when we're employing and the criteria and give equal opportunity to every Kenyan who has met the qualification. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of Majority, you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in supporting this amendment, which aims to further help on accountability on the realization of the national values as articulated in Article 232 of our Constitution, which among other things required that there should be diversity, not just in terms of regions, but also in terms of ages, in terms of gender, in terms of inclusivity, so that all the Kenyans can be included. But most importantly, also emphasizing the higher standards of professional ethics, meritocracy, and fair competition in the recruitment. And it will be obviously very good to then see how all these have been captured within the report from each of the commissions, and including any of the service commissions, and also both at the county service commission, both at the national service commissions, the totality of that, so that we can see how those values have been captured within the framework of the people who serve this nation. Mr. Speaker, it's obviously a good amendment, and we hope it will improve on that accountability and force people to think into the future that they'll be called to account to show who are the people who've been hired. Mr. Speaker, I'm taking from one of the comments, I think you may have put it in passing. When this accountability is called for, there's also a danger that a report like this could also be used negatively to deny certain people who merit appointment that they will not be appointed because they have exhausted their quota. I'm looking at, and I was very keen when Honorable Mwirigi was talking. Being a youth, his emphasis is on the youth. Yes, we have so many people who have already passed a certain age. Much as we are told that people over 60 are more productive, there's also the claim that perhaps we need to have younger people. So if you are applying and you're over 50, you're likely to be told, based on this report, that your age quota has already been exhausted. So I hope to see adverts coming out in future saying for this position, anyone over 45 need not apply because their quota has been exhausted, which will then go counter to Article 27 of the Constitution, which says nobody should be discriminated on account of their age. So it's something that we need to look at, say it's a good thing, but we need to appreciate its importance and its use by balancing the various interests. Similarly, there are some communities that, because of history, they are people who are recruited and are permanent and pensionable. Those people are still in service.
Leader Majority, just remind you, just recently in this very house, we had the interesting case of the commissioner to TSC.
Yeah. I'm aware.
Not the honorable. Council Baghi, who we had sought to discriminate on the basis of ageism. And this House agreed unanimously that we should not discriminate on the basis of age. So it is a conundrum, really. But proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. I think I'm just bringing this point because when these laws will be subjected to some challenge in future, the courts would then be coming here to say, what was the wisdom of this House in passing this law? It's not obviously to bar anyone from being recruited. I think we are passing this law to enhance the quality of disclosure in terms of how the various commissions have actualized the values, what challenges they are having, and perhaps some of the things that will be coming up is, yes, we couldn't stop hiring this person, although the average age of the commission is in the 60s, right? Much as we need younger blood, but we couldn't discriminate against him because of Article 27.
Leader Majority, I'll give you 1 minute. You should remember that we have limited the time now, but you could finalize in the next
I still have my turn.
You still do?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. But I wouldn't even take the 10 because I want members to contribute. But I just wanted to put that caveat that even as we legislate, we must not allow this positive reporting to be used negatively against people that their quota is exhausted, either on gender, on age, on people with disability that they are told, no, you already exhausted your 5%, so we cannot take you, much as you are meritorious, you merit the job, or even between the various regions. Mr. Speaker, I also want to point out that, yes, we are looking at each commission will report. So we are going to have several reports coming.
Leader Majority?
Now, I would like the member to offer the information within his own contribution.
Very well. Proceed.
So for now. But I would like to to urge that as we get the different disaggregated reports from each of these commissions, for us as a House to be able to appreciate the full picture of the diversity and the distribution at the national level, we will then need an aggregation of all these reports. There's no law that provides for that, and I do hope that we can have a framework that we will be able to see so that we don't make a decision based on Public Service Commission bringing a report, Teacher Service Commission bringing a report, or indeed the Nyandarua County Assembly bringing a report showing that 70% of the people come from Nyandarua, but when you now look at the Nakuru or Nova in totality, you might be able to then balance the different, or 47 reports, we'll be able to see the totality. So we will need to get some aggregated report that can help in us then understanding how the Kenyans are spread in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of ability, in terms of people with living with some disability or the other, because as a country, we want to make sure, even in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, that nobody is left behind, that everyone is brought into the national service and to bring the diversity in their contribution. So, Mr. Speaker, with those caveats, if they can be incorporated somehow into the future, in the interpretation, I support this amendment.
Thank you, Leader Majority. SDGs, nobody should be left behind. All of us should move together. The Honorable Chepkut, member for NAPCO.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support. Public service is the nerve system of this country. I will address the following. I will address diversity, distribution, and inclusivity. Values, principles are great virtues. Having said that, we are 43 tribes in this republic. Doesn't matter the tribe you come from. It is all about meritocracy. It's all about qualification, performance, abilities, and capacities. Having said that, Speaker, sir, allow me or permit me to comment on Wanyore. My great boss, the late Waziri Biwott, and the late President Moi, love Wanyore people. Reason is all about trust and performance. When the late P.S. Ambuka, who happens to be the district officer of our own Elgeyo Marakwet County, was promoted because of his performance. I want to say that today, 70% of the total population of this country are young men. They don't have experience, they have qualification. Senior positions in this republic, I want us to include people above 60 years and above, below 30 years and above. Age doesn't matter. You know, when you age, the creed is low. The degree of creed is very low. Speaker, sir, you've told us about Karanja Mbage, who was appointed at the age of 65, not because of anything, because of meritocracy and because of qualification. Speaker, sir, I want to say, having been a public servant, a gazetted officer of this republic in public administration, progression is the biggest problem. You stay in a job group for so long without promotion. So we want progression. We want motivation. We want Public Service Commission to inject motivation and progression, promote people according to their performance. And again, I want inclusivity. I want the 43 tribes to be included.
The member for Enabkoi, just hold on, there's a point of order from the member for Kisumu.
Thank you,
Honorable
Mr.
Rosa.
Speaker. Is it in order for the current speaker to actually insinuate that age is the determining factor of greed or corruption, given what happens in this country many times? Thank you.
Point noted. All I was saying, in employment,
The Honorable Chepkut, you have corrected yourself. I think greed cannot be associated with any age. I think
Correct.
this is a personal.
Thank you, Speaker.
And the commissioner you refer to is not Karanja, he's Nganga Mbagi.
oh, sawa.
Nganga
Sorry.
Mbagi.
I was only correcting.
But we must, all the same, we must condemn greed in whatever age it might.
I condemn in the strongest term possible that leadership is a calling from God to serve humanity with justice, with fairness, and integrity, as opposed to personal creed and sycophant. I know what is happening in this country. We are facing political turbulence, but I thank His Excellency the 5-star general because he is a great captain. Thank you.
The Honorable Chepkut, you've run out of time. I had protestations when I gave you an opportunity to speak that you had just walked in, but you are actually on top of my list when you got the opportunity to speak. We try to be fair also here. We shall have the Honorable Kingola Makau. Yeah, Bunyasi, I see you. You are very near. You are very close to speaking. Just hold your horses for a jiffy. You will speak. The Honorable Kingola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me put my weight on this Public Service Values and Principles Amendment Bill. Mr. Speaker, I join my colleagues who agree that it's about equity, diversity, and equal opportunities for every Kenyan. Mr. Speaker, public service is the only sustainable job that Kenyans can get. It has security of tenure, and Mr. Speaker, if not well distributed, it will go to some sectors, some regions, and discrimination will arise. Mr. Speaker, we have seen in the past a few accounting officers, they don't even adhere to the public service principles. They will employ their own, not caring, notwithstanding. Mr. Speaker, today, this country, we have so many graduates. We have so many qualified youth, qualified personnel, men and women. But because of where you come from, Mr. Speaker, it may deny you an opportunity. And Mr. Speaker, I think this House has the opportunity to implement and make sure that anybody going against this faces the law accordingly. Mr. Speaker, sometimes it takes me aback. You walk into a public office and you find more than 50% of the personnel come from the same region or speaking the same language. And yet, it is in our constitution that a certain number of people of the same ethnic group should not work. But when you walk to these offices, Mr. Speaker, because of impunity and what the previous speaker was saying, greed, someone fills an office with his relatives, with his tribesmen. And Mr. Speaker, I think it's high time. Corruption, we must start fighting from within. And this is the epicenter of fighting corruption, the National Assembly, the Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I think this motion is timely. Even at a time like this, during Corona, there are so many avenues, there are so many opportunities that have been given. But Mr. Speaker, the passage of the information of employment opportunities, even the public service, Mr. Speaker, it is blinded. It is not given So many Kenyans will not have access to information. Sometimes it is put in very small adverts in our dailies that you cannot even see. Or if they put it today, tomorrow there are interviews. So you can imagine someone who is in Turkana, someone who is in Lamu, if the interviews are being done in Nairobi, how will they access? Mr. Speaker, I think it's high time. And I remember in this House, we passed a law on information. It is important. If there's a public service opportunity or job opportunities, let it be put in time, advertised, so that every Kenyan who can qualify, Mr. Speaker, can get that opportunity. And as Kenyans, that's the only way we can improve our loyalty. Unless this is done, Mr. Speaker, our youth will grow up with that attitude that you must give something for you to get something. I think we should streamline our laws so that Kenyans can benefit from public service public service, so that we must have equity and equality put together so that Kenyans will feel that the government is doing justifiable and the distribution of job opportunities in public service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
The Honorable Bunyasi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I almost thought that the button wasn't working, but actually it was. I do support, Mr. Speaker, sir, any move towards strengthening our value systems, working within principles and strengthening value systems. If we followed that, it wouldn't be where we are in terms of the contestation between our diversities, among our diversities. But going forward, there's always time to correct. You correct in one time and you go forward doing differently. But I think if we're going to do that also, Mr. Speaker, we as leaders must learn to speak truth to authority, to speak truth to ourselves. I think we have come from an era which has been particularly lopsided. We've come from an era in which political formations prescribe details and go to points that distort any kind of balance there might have been, or improvements in balance there might have been. I would ask, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the registered political parties also, in reviewing coalition agreements, must make sure that clauses that say we shall divide all positions in half, and if it's a two-way contest, it means there will largely be two communities in it, even though they attempt a bit to perhaps increase the communities within the duos that enter this agreement. I think we must all be restrained explicitly. That's one. Two, I think the reporting arrangements have to be clear. How shall we know it's being done, even when it's agreed? I think that the reporting arrangements need to be clear, and violations need to be punished. Violations of officers who manage or sit or preside over arrangements that distort, this is extremely important, those soft, not hardware, extremely important considerations that this country needs at a time like this. Mr. Speaker, I would expect that other than the Office of the Auditor General, that should also look at this. Any other agency should also report explicitly on it. When we do vetting here and accept recruitments, and you say, well, but there isn't sufficient, no evidence that this institution is hiring in a sufficiently diverse way. The argument sometimes you get from among ourselves is that, oh, but they are Kenyans. Of course they are Kenyans. Of course they are all Kenyans. In fact, that is really a no-brainer. But the point should be that they should report at the end of the period to say, or maybe at the time that we are confirming, an explicit report should say, if I hired this additional person, this is what my demographic map would look like in my institution. Or looking back a year from what we hired, this is how it looked like. It's extremely important. But I have then one concern, Mr. Speaker. We are at a transition stage as communities in the modern era. We're still concerned exclusively and to a large extent on where our mothers came from and our fathers came from. These are the things that define our ethnicity. But going forward in the modern economy, we have to think about residents. So that if somebody is from Nambale in Busia and is a resident of Nairobi, they're applying as residents of Nairobi, or even born here, you can't categorize them or recategorize them by virtue of their names or by virtue of where their ID cards of their parents came from. That's retrogressive. I think we must grow to a point where residence progressively becomes the consideration to have. Now, it is possible that you may be a Bunyasi, born in Nambale, but actually probably moved over to Kilifi, and now you essentially you are in Kilifi. Now, they can't retrace me back to where I moved them, maybe sold my land and bought land someplace else. I know people might say, if we did that, we might get the ethnicity issues coming from each of those, but really converging into a single ethnicity, for example. But I think it's really important, and I find it completely depressing that if I'm from Nambale and I live in Nairobi or I live in Nakuru, that I'm not being considered by virtue of where I live, where I've invested. I'm being considered by virtue of where my parents were at the time that I was born. That also is retrogressive, and I think that we need to look at it very well. Mr. Speaker, sir, I thought that that cases where in institutions.
The Honorable Bunyasi, I'll allow you. I don't think the time had lapsed. I think you still had a minute.
I didn't see the. That's an ambush, Mr. Speaker.
I'll allow you 1 minute. So
1 minute, thank you. So let me just. Okay, and that sort of distracted my train of thought. But I was saying that we used to have institutions. I thought that was a matter of the old, where some institutions could function in a single language. I think we must get out of that. We really must get out of it. And if we don't, we are headed in a very, very bad corner. I think the examples that have been given about Tanzania are helpful, very helpful indeed. I think we should look at it. We must look at it. But as I conclude, let us temper ethnicity with some other consideration, such as residence. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Bunyasi, you know, I always enjoy your conversation in this House. Our fixation with where we come from, this ethnic fixation of where one of us comes from, I think we must, it runs contrary to what our Constitution says, that every Kenyan has got a right to stay in whatever area of this country. And Kenya should really just have one title deed, so that all of us belong to Kenya. And this is the title we should protect. Very well spoken, the Honorable Bunyasi. We shall have contribution from the Honorable Wachira Kabinga, member for Mwea.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, this amendment simply wants to amend Section 232 of our Constitution by introducing a requirement of an annual reporting on our human resource, especially in the public service, the county assemblies, and the county public service, Mr. Speaker. And I think this is a good requirement. It's good for Kenyans to know who is there, who is out there. But as many speakers have alluded to, it is important that we look at this reporting in a very sober manner, that we should not bring in politics into some of these reportings, Mr. Speaker, because such a report, as alluded to by the leader of majority, can be positively used or negatively used, Mr. Speaker. And it is important for us as Kenyans to look behind and know where we are coming from, to understand where we want to go. This is a country, as you yourself have alluded to, where every Kenyan have a right to choose where to stay. And if I choose to stay in Kisumu, and I am profiled by my name, then I'll be discriminated in Kisumu. It is equally important for us to know that even as you look at the statistics in the public service, as you look at those profiled names, you must also, alongside that, equip yourself with the statistics of the population that there could be some people who are too many, not just in that office, but even out there, including mortuary, including those that have been affected by COVID-19. And therefore, as Kenyans, as we prepare ourselves to make use of this report, we must also avoid the political economy of the bill or politicizing the bill itself. This has been a problem, and it's a high time that Kenyans start looking at each other as walking alongside each other, not to look behind, blame each other, instead of finding ways of building this nation as one nation. There are some people who keep on looking behind, keep on talking about how there has been or there is marginalization without facts of the present day. When you look at counties, Mr. Speaker, there is a requirement that counties must employ some certain percentage from outside their counties. It is now becoming necessary for us to hear from some of the counties that may have been complaining in the past to see how they are performing on that particular requirement. And these statistics, used positively, will start correcting some of those thinkings. And therefore, I am urging our fellow Kenyans, and especially this parliament, whenever a motion comes in, let us look at it in a very sober manner. Let us not use history and the past to judge the future and the present. When we have important bills, and this is why we probably have a small problem in our other house, Mr. Speaker, because people are not looking at issues at the present. They are looking at issues with some history and some baggages that they are carrying from the past. Let us live to the present. When we bring in bills, even in this house, Mr. Speaker, I've always had a feeling that we need to review some of the things that are existing, including our own CDF, where it's talking about equality and not equity. When such a debate comes, let us look at it in a sober manner. Let us not look at it in the eye of some certain tribes. Let us look at it in form of Kenyans. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that in this House we pass a bill of ensuring that in some of these public offices, only one language, Kiswahili, is used and any other becomes a crime in that office. I support Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Wangwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the onset, allow me to thank the Honorable Madegu, Honorable Mwadime Andrew, for giving us this wonderful bill, which has come very